Important to have nurses who know in depth about their patients' conditions and ask questions. Even stern, assertive questions when something doesn't fit. We all make mistakes, and in an absolutely critical role of nurses is to question those giving them orders. In fact, when my nurses honestly believe there is something wrong with an order, they will occasionally even refuse to do it and say, then you're going to have to give it yourself. Those are good nurses. This allows doctors and others giving orders to question what we're doing, reevaluate, and take responsibility. Sometimes I reassure them that the order is in fact what is needed. Sometimes there was a miscommunication. And sometimes they caught a mistake. And I am always grateful for that. There is nothing I fear more than working a shift in the ER with a nurse who blindly obeys without asking questions. It removes that safety net of having a second set of eyes to ensure that patients are not harmed. I love the nurses that I work with, and I'm so grateful that they are inquisitive, assertive, and bold in their intellectual independence and advocacy for their patients. Bringing this back to COVID, the College of Nurses of Ontario has made a bold and harmful policy that undermines this vital role nurses play in patient safety. In a time where public health officers are making policies that are aimed to lower COVID numbers, but are inflicting massive harms on their patients through social isolation, shutting down regular health care, and masking of the population without evidence, nurses are being forced into silence. They are not allowed to be that voice to the public and to the healthcare authorities that we are on the wrong track, causing harm. This is so dangerous to public and patient safety. When nurses aren't allowed to question policies, whether helpful or harmful, they are being taught to simply turn their minds off and obey. This might sound inconsequential in the public sphere, but actually, it teaches them to also turn their minds off at work, undermining that safety net. The smartest, safest nurses will not give a medication unless they know why it's given and will question the doctor when that's not the case. If nurses are aware many of these policies are not evidence-based or ethical, but we have to follow them anyway, then it fosters a culture of blind obedience where mistakes and harm are inevitable. For this reason, I'm calling on the CNO to stop undermining patient safety and immediately withdraw their social media policy. I also call on them to drop any investigations leading from that policy and reaffirm the role of nurses to be independent, critical thinkers, to advocate for evidence-based rather than policy-based care. And finally, to be loud and vocal advocates for the needs of their patients, much like the nurses standing before you today. These are the kinds of nurses we desperately need in hospitals to keep patients safe. That was Dr. Patrick Phillips. And you can catch him on many interviews with Bright Light News even, that's here today, and with Rocco Galati, standing up with other doctors speaking truth. And with that, I'd like to introduce the 4 nurses that are standing before you today that have brought all of this together, that have been affected by this college, and we're here to share our stories. So with that, I'd like to introduce my co-founder, my partner in crime, Sarah Shajunian.
Oh no. Okay. All right. For those of you who don't know us, we are the founders of Canadian Frontline Nurses, and we are proud advocates for medical freedom. Our mission is to unite as many nurses as possible, educate the public, and bring the ethics back into health care. as a whole. We are here to hold the lamp so that others can see our light and be empowered to stand for the same. We are nurses doing what is right and standing up for the truth. My name is Sarah Shajunian. I've been a nurse since 2004. Today, I want to share my nursing story with you in hopes of awakening and inspiring the sleeping lions to stand in their power and do the same. This specific speech is primarily aimed at nurses, but also applies to all the guardians of humanity, teachers, police officers, pastors, and parents, amongst many others. Before I got into nursing, I was literally drinking my life away, struggling with the ghosts of my past. I was appalled and deeply disturbed by the state of our world and had no clue on how I could ever fit in. When I entered nursing school, something changed. It brought light to my darkness. It brought excitement back into my life. I was passionate about caring for the sick, and most importantly, it added value to my life when I felt it had none. It came so naturally to me. I felt empowered and alive while nursing. I knew immediately that this is what I was born to do.
Yes, you were. Yes.
I worked in a nursing home for the greater part of my career. I loved my job. It brought me hundreds of grandparents who shared their wisdom with me and gave me love I cherished greatly. I've cried many tears and had the privilege to share precious last moments with countless residents and their families. One thing that always disturbed me about nursing homes, though, is how obvious it is that the government doesn't put much value on these seniors. Their diets consist of powdered eggs, canned mandarins, cheap box puddings, and flavored sugar water. It's very obvious that the purpose of nursing home is not for giving our elderly the best care possible, but to try and get as much of a profit as possible out of them. That's why a huge red flag went up in my head on the day the government decided to shut down the entire economy to protect these same vulnerable people. When the news came out, I thought it was a joke and that no one would buy it. I thought everyone at work would feel the same way. I was dead wrong. At first, I was very vocal about my views, but I quickly realized that this may backfire in a really bad way. The union, for which I held the position of chief steward, made it very clear that they didn't have our backs. I was asked if I cared for the lives of my residents when I asked questions about our rights when it came to the testing. I was scared. I'm a single mom. I couldn't afford to lose my job, so I became very quiet. I felt sick. This wasn't what I signed up for. I always thrived on being the voice of the people, but the people didn't know they were being fooled, and even worse, some were now threats reporting every little disobedience to management and public health. I've been silenced many times in my life, and one of the things I learned through my healing journey is that finding your voice, along with standing in your truth, is the only way out of the darkness. When the second lockdowns hit, I just couldn't take it anymore. Rage fueled my body. I was a ticking time bomb. I could no longer hold back. I started speaking up, first online, and a few weeks later, I found myself founding Nurses Against Lockdowns and speaking at my first protest. I finally felt free again. It was absolutely liberating! And then, immediately after, everything I had feared would happen actually did happen. I was fired within the same week from my first job and lost my second job not too long after. My license is under investigation. We were defamed on national news in Canada and the US, being called domestic terrorists by some, and even had the RCMP knock at our door. The online mob that followed the media attacks were brutal. There were definitely moments where I was scared for my life, but I pulled through. Much quicker than I thought, actually. And then, something phenomenal and unexpected happened. Only a few days after being ostracized, I was flooded with a huge wave of love by supporters from all over the world. And it hasn't stopped coming since. Countless opportunities arose from standing up for what is right. I've connected with some of the most beautiful souls to walk this planet. I finally got to write a chapter in a book, and best of all, we founded Canadian Frontline Nurses and are now building our own healthcare system, which will be by the people, for the people. It's literally what I've always dreamed of. I guess I had to take a huge risk, a leap of faith to get it. I believe that's what awaits all of us who do what's right and align our values with our actions. You must all trust and believe in this process. In nursing school, one of the first and foremost important things we learn about is the code of ethics. We were taught that when the industry turns against the people, that it's our duty to agitate and advocate for what is best for our communities. I'm proud to say that I stood by my pledge to do no harm. And if that means that I'm no longer included in the industry, so be it. I'm a free nurse now. No longer a captive agent. And that gives me the freedom and opportunity to be unapologetically the people's nurse. Yes! Yes. I wear my uniform today because I want to show people who think that I'm no longer a nurse that nothing is further from the truth. I feel like more of a nurse now than I've ever felt before. Nursing doesn't come from a piece of paper. Yes. It's a calling. Yes. It comes from the heart. Yes. The CNO can never take that away from me. And the same applies to all of you. I know most of you nurses are like me. You chose your profession due to your love of humanity. I understand that this is very difficult for you, but we are running out of time. Every minute that passes, an elderly person dies alone, a child overdoses, or a business owner commits suicide. We are witnessing crimes against humanity in every aspect of our society. Please, armor up with courage and join our movement. United, we can create a much better and highly more effective healthcare system. Now, we know that what we're doing is not for the faint of heart. We are calling for the bravest of all nurses to please step forward and stand with us. You already know who you are. Don't wait for a sign from the outside. Look within and listen to your intuition. You are the one. When I first spoke out, I was ready to lose everything if I had to, because absolutely nothing is worth selling my soul for. Revolutions are never easy and require sacrifice. But losing our jobs and material things is nothing compared to losing our rights and freedoms for the upcoming generation. I don't know about you guys, but my kids are my life. Without them, I probably wouldn't still be here. So I'm literally willing to die for this, for their future. I'm all in. And if you're a parent, you should be too. The time has come for each and every one of us to stand in our power. You are the hero of your story. You decide what's going to happen to you. Please do not let fear and hate take over our humanity. Spread love and don't be silent in the face of oppression. The world needs for you to be awake and stand up for what is right. It starts with you. Together, we will overcome and we will rise through the ashes of the matrix. Who's with me? Thank you.
It is with great honor that I get to introduce our next nurse. So some of you may have already heard about her. She was actually one of the first nurses that was publicly defamed by the media back in July of last year. I remember when I was speaking out publicly on social media, people would send me this article as like a threat, being like, this could happen to you. And I thought, if I could stand in the presence of this brave nurse that stood up and was willing to take this risk, then I would be honored. And here we are. I get to introduce Crystal Pitter to you guys today.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Hello, Toronto! Thank you to each and every one of you for coming out and supporting us today. I know that each and every one of us here are so very appreciative of your support and your love. I'd like to start with sharing a scripture verse, if I may. Proverbs 31, verse 8. Speak up for those who cannot speak for themselves. Ensure justice for those being crushed. My name is Crystal Pitter. I'm a nurse practitioner who is very honored and privileged to be part of the Canadian Frontline Nurses and to stand here today with Kristen, Sarah, and Jessica, strong and empowered nurse warriors. I have been practicing nursing for 24 years in various areas, including infectious disease. Nurses are the first line of defense for patients. Through empathetic, evidence-based practice, nurses touch the heart, communicate compassion, and deliver care and services while preventing and/or mitigating harm. I'm a nurse in good standing with no history of any negative performance appraisals or discipline. I'm a truth seeker and speaker. I adhere to moral and ethical codes that are unshakable. I have extensively researched many topics in pursuit of truth and high-level evidence-based information to inform my practice. I'm extremely passionate about bodily autonomy, informed consent, medical transparency, the protection of God-given inalienable rights and freedoms, advocating for the public, standing strong for all that is noble, and opposing and exposing deceit, corruption, and evil. I'm a deeply compassionate person and professional who demonstrates integrity and sound critical thinking skills. When harmful measures lacking medical and scientific evidence were implemented in response to COVID, I embraced the role of whistleblower by boldly and courageously speaking truth on social media to protect the health and safety of humanity despite the risk of opposition, persecution, and retribution. Whistleblowers use free speech rights to expose abuses of power that betray the public trust. If Canada wants to fight against injustice, it needs to ensure that those exposing it aren't penalized.
Yes!
Media outlets published defamatory articles in relation to my Facebook posts last summer. I was falsely portrayed as a terrible person, a danger to society, a conspiracy theorist, and many demanded that my license to practice nursing be revoked.
Disgusting.
The media even mentioned serial killer Elizabeth Wettlaufer in one of the articles.
Shame on them.
I lost my job and my license is being threatened.
Wow.
This was a direct result of exercising my highest nursing duty to protect the health and safety of the public by providing high-level scientific evidence to inform decision-making. What is considered high-level scientific evidence? Meta-analyses of randomized controlled trials and systematic reviews are the best evidence in clinical research. These are integral to decision-making in medicine. Anecdotal experience and expert opinion are low-level evidence. Despite being asked for the evidence to validate the actions taken in response to COVID, those in positions of leadership have failed to produce any. There is no evidence to validate mask wearing, social distancing, PCR testing, lockdowns, and school, church, and small business closures. Those that are advocating for mandates are not referencing highest level evidence to support their arguments. We have witnessed a severe overreaction in response to COVID. To paraphrase Rocco Galati, a brilliant constitutional lawyer with 31 years of experience who filed a lawsuit in July 2020 related to COVID mismanagement, the brutal overreaction to COVID is likened to slamming a hammer down on a glass table, shattering it to pieces when the goal was to kill a fly. Every death is absolutely tragic. I don't want to minimize that in any way. I have sincere and abundant compassion for every life that has been negatively affected. However, SARS-CoV-2 is not the unusually deadly virus we were led to believe it was by politicians and health leaders. We have the government data on COVID deaths. When cases are compared to deaths, it's abundantly clear that fear is unjustified. When death statistics are examined, the impact of COVID on population life expectancy is minimal. The death rate in children is essentially zero. Media-incited fear, panic, and hysteria through mind game propaganda tactics is entirely unjustified. Our bodies respond to perceived danger with a fight or flight response as a mechanism of survival. However, when we live in constant fear from physical dangers or perceived threats, we can experience negative impacts in all areas of life and can even become incapacitated. Fear weakens the immune system. It can lead to fatigue, depression, PTSD, accelerated aging, and premature death. The world looks very scary to someone in a chronic state of fear. It paralyzes our ability to think logically and critically. The stress hormone cortisol is also an enemy to public health. Scientists have known for years that elevated cortisol levels interfere with learning and memory, decrease immune function, and increase weight gain, blood pressure, cholesterol, and heart disease. Chronic stress and elevated cortisol levels also increase risk for depression, mental illness, and lower life expectancy. Throughout history, logic and science guided medical practice. The sick were quarantined, not the healthy. A focused approach was implemented. Those who were known to be vulnerable were protected. It is well known that the elderly, immunocompromised, and those with comorbidities are most vulnerable to COVID. It is entirely possible to take action in a focused manner to protect those that are most vulnerable while allowing the general population to live their lives. The creator of the entire universe masterfully created our bodies with a magnificent immune system. It consists of lines of defense in addition to functions that cleanse and regulate our bodies. Our immune system consists of our skin, mucous membranes, secretions, the healthy microbiome, white blood cells, inflammation, body temperature, antibodies, and specialized lymphocytes such as B cells, T